Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. 27 years ago, a mother and daughter left their home in rural Sunazona, Arizona for a walk to a nearby store. This was a walk they made often, but this time they would never make it home, and the rest of their family would be left with little answers as to what could have happened to them. Danielle Pitcher was one of 14 children to parents Dorothy and Jack Pitcher. That's a lot of kids, but in 1993, only 6 of the kids, including Danielle, were still living at home, as the others had grown up and left the nest to be out on their own. The Pitcher family rented a home on Ash Creek Road in Sunazona, Arizona, which is a very small town. It had a population of just a little over 200 people, so it's one of those little secluded towns where I'm sure everybody knows everybody, and apparently they keep secrets too. The Pitcher family had a routine on Sundays. All 6 kids would go to church, Dorothy and Jack would stay home, and in the evening they would have dinner as a family. On Sunday, May 23rd, 1993, the routine was pretty much the same. When the kids returned home from church, Mom Dorothy asked one of the younger kids if they wanted to walk to the store with her. The younger child declined the offer to go, so 14-year-old Danielle agreed to make the trip with her mother. Like I previously said, this was a walk Dorothy made all the time, and one of the kids always went with her. With that many kids, I'm sure it was difficult to get one-on-one time with each child. So on this walk, not only would they get some exercise, but whoever went would get some time with Mom where siblings wouldn't be interrupting and taking some of Mom's attention. Dorothy and Danielle set off walking for the store around 1 p.m. that day, while the dad, Jack, stayed home with the other 5 siblings and another child they were babysitting for the weekend. While Dorothy and Danielle were gone, he would get everything ready for their family dinner that night. Dorothy and Danielle left, taking only $3 with them and nothing else. Dorothy didn't even take her purse with her. On their way, they stopped at one of the other siblings' homes. She was grown and had a family of her own, but they wanted to see if she wanted to accompany them on their walk. She declined. She was too tired, and she had just had her own baby, but she said they should stop by and get her on their way back, and she would go have dinner with the whole family. Dorothy and Danielle told her they would stop back by and said see you in a bit and continued on their way. I have read and also heard in podcasts that it was only a 2-mile walk from their home to the store. Other articles say 4 miles, but I measured on a map and I came up with 4.3 miles one way from the home to the store. Even taking back roads, which they may have done as a shortcut, it's more than 2 miles. So I'm not sure why the distance varies depending on which article you read, but either way, it was quite a walk there and back. Several hours went by, and the sibling whose house they had stopped by on their way started wondering why they hadn't come back to get her yet. She drove to the Pitcher home, and that is when she found out from Jack, the dad, that they hadn't returned home yet. So they went driving looking for Dorothy and Danielle. Much more time had passed than it usually took them to make that trek to the store and back, so they were starting to get worried. They drove the main road and the back roads, any route Dorothy and Danielle would have taken to the store, figuring they were just taking longer than expected and that they would see them walking and pick them up. They even headed to the A&M store where Dorothy had planned to pick up cigarettes for Jack, and they were told that Dorothy and Danielle had been there, but had left hours before. They started contacting friends of both Dorothy and Danielle and other family members, hoping someone had seen them or heard from them, but no one had. As it got later and later in the day and he still had not found his wife and daughter, Jack contacted police to report them missing and hoped to get some help in finding them. But cops told him since his wife was an adult and his daughter was with her mother, they couldn't consider them missing yet and wouldn't do anything until they had been missing for 48 hours. 48 hours passed and there was still no sign of either of them. No one had seen them. No one had reported having any contact with them, so police got involved. They brought out the tracking dogs, and the canines tracked Dorothy and Danielle from their home to the store, then back out to the main road. The scent trail stopped right at the side of the highway on the S-curve of Highway 181. It was known that Dorothy would accept rides from people on occasion, but she never took rides from people she didn't know. Arizona gets crazy hot, like really hot, so I'm sure catching a lift in an air-conditioned car after walking 4 miles was an easy thing to say yes to if a friend stopped and offered. Now, since the scent the dogs had picked up ended at the road, you would assume someone stopped to pick them up, and since Dorothy had the sense enough to not ride with strangers, especially when her child was with her, I would assume they knew the person if they did get in a car, which is what the scent evidence suggests. But where did they go from there? There are discrepancies on whether or not Dorothy and Danielle actually made it to the store that day. The owner of the store says they did not come in that day, but that they had been there the day before. An employee of the store says they did come in on Sunday and bought ice cream. It was also stated by a preacher of a local church that he had been told they were seen at the store using the payphone behind the building. Another employee there says they didn't come to the store that day, and she's positive about this because Dorothy was supposed to see her that day to pay back some change. I think it was 30 cents that she had borrowed from her when she was short on cash a few days earlier. So, did they even make it to the store? If so, who did Dorothy call from the payphone? They didn't have a phone at their home, so she wouldn't have been calling anyone back at the house. Police did try to get the records from that payphone, but were unable to do so. Jack, Dorothy's husband, doesn't believe that they made it to the store that day because the employee that said they did says they got ice cream, but Dorothy only took enough money to get Jack cigarettes. She only took $3. She didn't have enough money to purchase ice cream and a pack of smokes. Plus, they had a tub of ice cream at home that they had gotten from the Schwan man the day before on Saturday. With that many children, they were most likely on a tight budget, and she probably wouldn't have wasted money on something they already had in the freezer at home. Now, a local man, Danny Morris, who was a neighbor of the Pitcher family, claimed to have seen the pair walking along the S-curve on the main highway that day. He said he would have offered them a ride, but he was going in the opposite direction. This is the last time they were known to be seen. Police did question everyone in the Pitcher home, and they all had consistent stories and stated there was nothing different about that Sunday, and all the kids confirmed that Jack had been home with them. I do think law enforcement was suspicious of Jack at first because they do tend to look closer to home first when someone goes missing, especially if it's a spouse. Jack was given not one, but 2 polygraph tests, and he passed them both, and there was no evidence that he had anything to do with the disappearance of his wife and daughter. Another person that police were interested in was a man that Dorothy had previously had an affair with. I don't know his name, but he was questioned. I believe his home was even searched, and not only was no evidence of his involvement found, he wasn't even in Arizona when they disappeared. He had moved away quite some time before they vanished. Now, in a small town, there are going to be rumors, and people were talking. Remember that neighbor, Danny Morris, that says he saw them walking the S-curve that day? Police were told that a young blonde-haired girl was seen at Danny's home after the disappearance, and that she had been killed, buried, and a concrete slab was poured over the gravesite. Danny was also supposedly seen burning something in a barrel on his property and trying to hide it. From what I could gather, Danny seems to be somewhat of the town troublemaker. He was in trouble with the law quite often, as were other members of the Morris family, including Danny's father, who was a convicted sex offender. At one point, after Dorothy and Danielle went missing, Danny had gotten in trouble once again and was facing some hefty charges. Police thought this would be a great opportunity to get info from him on their disappearance, if he knew anything, and I believe they offered him some sort of leniency on his current charges if he would tell them what he knew. But nope. He stuck to his story of seeing them at the S-curve and driving on by. Years later, there was a man in prison, an old friend of Danny Morris's, that was on his deathbed, and he decided he wanted to get things off his conscience. He contacted one of Dorothy's older daughters and told her that he had seen Dorothy and Danielle on the Morris property and that he believed they were kept there and then murdered. He told her he didn't come forward sooner because he was strung out on drugs and that was more important to him at that time. I believe he shared this information with law enforcement as well. While Danny was, again, in jail on unrelated charges, police were able to get a search warrant for his 20-acre property. They used ground-penetrating sonar, they checked under concrete slabs, and they brought in tracking dogs, and I believe they even leveled some of the buildings on his land, but they didn't find anything. They spent a week there trying to find something, anything, that would prove Danielle and Dorothy had been there, but they found nothing. There is a person whose name I won't mention because I'm honestly not even sure if it's their real name, that has voiced their defense of Danny very openly in the comments sections of some articles. They claim that they were with Danny and his wife that Sunday, but in a separate car, and they too saw Dorothy and Danielle walking. They claimed that they were with Danny that entire day and that he couldn't have had anything to do with the disappearance. I don't believe they were ever questioned by police, though, which is odd because you would think police would have wanted to talk to them and try and clear Danny so they could look elsewhere. It's been 27 years and no one has ever been charged in this case. What happened to Dorothy and Danielle Pitcher? Did they disappear on purpose? Or did someone do something nefarious to them? Sunazona, I believe, is only 53 miles, a little over an hour drive from the Mexican border. Is it possible Dorothy wanted to leave intentionally and escape to Mexico with Danielle? Or did someone pick them up and take them across the border? My opinion, I don't believe they ever left Sunazona. I have a hard time believing Dorothy would leave all her kids, and I don't think Danielle would have agreed to leave her family either. They took nothing with them but $3. Dorothy didn't have her purse, her dentures, or her eyeglasses with her. If you're leaving for good, you will more often than not take your billfold and at least a few belongings. I think someone took them. Who? I really don't know, but I do think they got in a car with someone local, a friend they knew, or maybe they were forced into a vehicle and something terrible happened. Maybe it was Danny Morris, and he and his family, unfortunately, did a really good job of hiding evidence and their remains. I don't think Jack, the husband and father, had anything to do with it. I find it very unlikely that he would off his wife and one of his kids, knowing he would be left raising the other 5 children all on his own. He had a very hard time after this happened. His older daughters had to take the 5 kids in to help raise them, and Jack's health suffered greatly. He passed away in 1998, only 5 years after his wife and child went missing. Let me know in the comments what you think happened. At the time of their disappearance, Danielle was 5'1", 112 pounds. She has blonde hair and blue eyes. She was wearing a white shirt or tank top, white shorts, and black or brown heeled boots with a fringe. Dorothy was 5'2" to 5'3", and around 145 pounds. She has brown hair and brown eyes. She normally wore eyeglasses and dentures, but did not have either with her the day she vanished. She was last seen wearing a white short outfit with a duck design on it. There is a podcast on Dorothy and Danielle's disappearance done by the Vanish podcast, and I was able to get a lot of info for this video from that. They always do such a great job telling the stories of those that have gone missing, and they are my absolute favorite. So be sure to check them out. I will post the link in the description box if you want to give it a listen. The family does have a website dedicated to finding their mother and sister. It is missingpictures.org, and that will be linked below as well. One amazing thing about the Pitcher family is the siblings have never given up looking for their mother and sister. Still to this day, they send flyers out to Sunazona residents every single year, and they are still searching. They still hold benefits, motorcycle rides, things like that, so they can still raise awareness and raise money to keep looking for their lost family members. If you have any information on the disappearance of Dorothy and Danielle, please contact the Cochise County Sheriff's Office at 520-432-9500 or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-843-5678. As always, I mean no harm in doing these videos. I am only trying to spread awareness on the lesser known missing person cases. I post videos like this one every Wednesday, so please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss an upload. My entire missing playlist is on the screen now. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you again next week. Bye.